scientific idea that the Earth is Gaia. So I feel there are very strong links between our beliefs and the need to conserve the natural world. What I'm hoping to show you today is just some of the surviving remnants of the land that the ancient peoples knew. Unfortunately, they are only now tiny remnants, but some of the things which maybe inspired them, inspired their beliefs, their lifestyle, because the type of places I'll show you is the land they lived in. So we'll concentrate on ancient woodlands and trees because this is the time of year to see them at their best. The meadow, incidentally, is definitely on the agenda, and we've timed it right, but that'll be later on. This is the area which I was born and brought up in. I'm, in a sense, a child of Albion, and this is the land which has inspired my interest as well. The family has lived in the area for 200 years at least, so I have very strong links with the land that we'll see. And I've walked it in all seasons, in all weathers, in all moods for 10 years now, seeing what it can teach me. And that has given a lot of inspirations in the general field of earth mysteries as well as in natural history and so on, and in folklore as well. Just very briefly, the area we're in now is an area of ancient common land which certainly existed in Saxon times, and the commons of England had their origins probably in prehistory. The area behind you is called Butter Wood. It's an ancient wood pasture belonging to Greywell parish, first mentioned in medieval times. It's no longer grazed as it would have been in the past, but it's still a fantastic woodland, one of the best in Hampshire. The area starting here and beyond the houses, and indeed with the motorway now in the middle of it, Bartley Heath and Hook Common, which again is an ancient area of common land. And one project down here, as I've been researching it, it's now a nature reserve. And we've been able to trace that back to medieval times as well, in terms of documentary evidence. And we know that ancient peoples inhabited this area. The village of Newnham, about a mile further to the north, has traces of stone implements being found and signs of early settlement. We know that the peoples would have hunted this area. On the downs beyond Odiham, which we're going to later on, there used to be quite a number of tumuli. Most of them now are unfortunately ploughed out. There are also the ancient Ridgeway path, which is again believed to be prehistoric, and we've got to drive down that in a little while. So the prehistory is very much here, and the landscape is still very much living. Now, this particular place is the boundary, of the ancient Saxon boundary, between the parishes of Odiham and Naked Skewers. There is a mention, I've got a copy here of the text of a perambulation dated 1562, and it's very detailed, incredibly detailed, particularly with trees. The one thing it mentions is thence westwards to another oak standing on the highway from North Warnborough to Newnham, which is what we're standing on. It's rather more modern now, but this is the old road between those two villages. And the oak is just back in the trees here. It's very old, it's very hollow, it's just about alive. It's the oldest tree that I can put a date to. It was obviously a mature tree in 1562. And incidentally, the itinerary which I've suggested, we can vary as much as you like. And we can change the order, we can add other things in, we can leave things out, and we can make it up as we go along. Whatever you're most interested in. Just before we go in, I'll quickly show you some pictures. I think two pictures which, to me, sum it all up of what in our modern age we've been capable of doing, that we can change something like this to something like this. We can and do very often.
Is that literally the same?
It's not the same place,
no, but it
shows a comparison.
Possible.
Can you show the face on this side?
Sorry. This is actually used to be ancient fenland in Nottinghamshire, which is now being completely drained and rarefied. The other picture, incidentally, still exists, and it's about 2 miles from here, but we won't actually have time probably to do a riverside walk as well.
You mentioned this.
huge, isn't it?
Well, on the other side, there's a little bit. On the other side of the tour. Yeah. You have to go down.
That's what it is, I mean, that's
Is that big enough for desktop?
what kind of people is that?
Trees, a generally open expanse of probably heather and grasses and maybe gorse. And then on the western edge was Buffer Wood, which is something like 800 acres of ancient woodland.
Can you put this over? Acid, isn't it? Would it be acid enough?
We have a complete gradation, and we've got chalk flora down in Brayville village, coming up the slope through Buffer Wood to the Cliff Common is actually on a plateau, and that is covered in heather still. So we've got complete gradation over about a mile. The chalk springs at the bottom of the hill. But are you a naturalist? Right.
It's a line.
Oh yeah. Phil.
So not everybody gets their time with the
It was going to be here for a long time before. So this is an ancient woodland. There's a whole complex of them along the north edge of the town. And 3 years ago we had quite a battle with a housing developer who wanted to flatten the whole lot right through and put up 2,000 houses.
Oh no.
Oh yes. Fortunately they were persuaded after a lot of hassle that it wasn't a good idea.
Really?
Yeah.
With continuation of what
Just continuing out, yeah. So that was Fields 10 years ago. I just want to keep on expanding it northwards. What you've got is the whole range of ancient woodland flowers and trees. You'll find there's about 25 native species of trees and shrubs in this woodland, and approaching 100 species of different wildflowers and grasses and so on. It's very good characteristic ancient woodland for Hampshire. And during the public inquiry to try and stop the house building, there was an ecologist who gave evidence who actually suggested this was prehistoric woodland. He certainly went as far as saying it's 1,500 years old, probably a lot older. Without going into a lot of very complex details, which I only half understood anyway, we found a lot of evidence to suggest that it was very special woodland indeed.
What's it called? Does it have a name?
Yes, there are various names. This one is Sherland's copse that we'll walk through. It's hill copse and college copse going through here. And then there's a great nightingale's copse, is the next one down.
College? Why is it called that?
Because it used to be owned by Corpus Christi College in Oxford.
Who owns it now? All of this?
The local farmer.
Oh.
A mile through. But it's actually the estate maps of Corpus Christi College which have told us all about the history of it. The date is 1606.
Where are we now?
Where are you now?
What's the name of the place?
You are... all of this lot is now houses. So you're actually down there. And that is Sherland's copse, that is Great Nightingales, that is College copse and Hill copse.
So we're on that little red dotted line.
Yes. Anyone who's interested in anything, or just the trees or whatever, we'll ask as we go along.
Are we going straight up? Yes,
Last weekend was terrible.
That's right. She inherited it, and
Well, yeah, more or less, there's no way back to make it. No.
There's the one down there. We thought perhaps Yellow Archangel.
The yellow
There's actually
Yellow archangel.
although it's only just coming in the plan, that's the leaf.
Woodland anemones.
When it's deepish. I hope we've won it. We've had a good steer, but it's not going away.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
A wild service tree, a rare tree characteristic of very old woodlands.
Yes.
Are you going to tell us what
It's like a tiny fig, what's named, doesn't it?
It's a corruption of the Latin name, isn't it? Something like that.
Thank you. I hope someone would know.
Sorbus, something or other.
It is a sorbus, yes. You're right, yes. Yes.
Well, you must get you some from Antras.
Used to. I should have brought my own.
Green name. Have you got any?
From old wood that it's been planted, which does sometimes happen.
So we could do that and save it, couldn't we? Take a cut in. Is that a good thing?
seeds?
You would have more trees. Let's preserve the woods where it already grows.
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying you should try, but save a threatened tree, then that would be better than...
Yeah. No, obviously, as a last resort, you can help.
Odiham Firs, a beacon site traditionally used at the time of the Armada, but there's no historical evidence for this. It's a beautiful hilltop, crowned with a ring of Scots pines and a clump of deciduous trees inside it. While we were here, Chris mentioned an interesting theory he'd heard recently, that one reason pines often grow on hilltop beacon sites is that they're deliberately planted there to provide fuel for the beacon. He also mentioned that when he was just starting ley hunting, he drew a large number of lines over this map and noticed that a number converged here. On going to the site, he found this beautiful clump.
There do indeed seem to be a number of lays going through Odiham Firs. The first one, going eastward, goes through a crossroads, runs along a mean following stretch of road for about 2 miles, goes through another beacon hill, skirts Caesar's Camp, and goes through a crossroads near Ash, finally going to a lay centre at Stag Hill near Guildford on the University of Surrey campus. Now this centre was found previously and is mentioned in the booklet Campus Lines. Another lay coming southwards comes from across tracks near the Priory at Swallowfield, goes through Hook Church, through Odiham Firs, through Long Sutton Church, which we visited on this trip, through another crossroads, and King John's Hill, East Worldham, and finally to List Church. Another goes through a fort at Sherfield-on-Loddon, across tracks at Newnham, through Odiham Firs, then to a crossroads at Well. Now this hamlet is the site of Gistard's Well of the Saxon Charter. There's a well at the track junction of the Harroway here, and we visited this on this trip. It continues through across tracks in Alice Holt Forest and continues to Fernhurst Church. Yet another goes through a moat on the Roman road near Chinham, goes through a church at Greywell, through Odiham Firs, and then to Horsedown Common, a prominent hilltop which we visited on this trip. It then continues to a crossroads and stone at Millbridge, which we visited on a previous field trip. Another lay goes through Basing House, comes through Odiham Firs, and through Crondall Church. Now this is on the site of a Saxon church, and it's got folklore interest because it's got ghost and fairy legends. The lay then carries on through Farnham Castle, through Crooksbury Hill and a crossroads nearby, and through Godalming Church.
That obviously was a reason to come up here, and I came up here and discovered it was a beacon hill. But the infuriating thing is that I lost that map later on, and I've never been able to repeat that pattern. Whether it was there was anything in it, I don't know. But, certainly the hill itself is a significant point.
It led you to here.
Yeah. There is on the ridge at the limit of visibility, there is an Iron Age earthwork, quite a massive one, in this direction, which would certainly be invisible from here if it was open country on the hill over there. Now it's now wooded completely. Well, the more interesting landscape is actually around to the east and the south. So I suppose London is that way. Not that you wanted to know. And the eastern boundary is, you can see the hill over there.
You also briefly told us about
So the two highest points in the parish are at opposite sides. And this is the ancient Saxon, at least boundary, maybe older than that. And plus the Ridgeway, it's got some high points on it. And this is the Ridgeway we'll be going along, the Harrowway, the itinerary. That is Horsedown Common, which we'll be a lot closer to later on. And then the skyline here is the next Beacon Hill. Now those of you who came on the field trip about 2 years ago to Caesar's Camp, Caesar's Camp is just beyond that hill. To give you some sort of orientation. Caesar's Camp being an Iron Age hill fort, for those of you who weren't there. There's a lot of intervisibility in this landscape, the point I'm drawing out, and if only it was clear there would be a lot more as well. The other places we walked 2 years ago, further across towards Camberley, would be visible here, with the old trackway and ridgeway paths over there.
So can you show us one of your ley lines that you found on your map?
Well, like I said, I lost the map, and I've never been able to repeat it.
Well, the church tower down there, where do we line up beyond it?
With a pylon. That is Odiham Parish Church, and the original Saxon church of the parish.
Are we going to stop at a church at all at any point? Or?
Definitely.
A wild flower meadow near Stratfield Say House, full of purple and white snakeshead fritillary. Riverside meadows such as this were once commonplace across southern England and covered thousands of acres. Modern farm chemicals and ploughing have destroyed all but a few in less than a century. The 13th century Long Sutton Church is on one of the Odiham Firs lays and aligns with Hook and List churches. In the road close by are two ancient sarsen stones, said by local historians to be Saxon boundary stones. The ancient Harrow Way ran through Long Sutton, and the first settlement probably owes its origin to this. The oldest windows in the church are two narrow 13th century lancets at the east end, and the narrow lancet at the east end of the north wall of the nave. The four massive oak pillars supporting the 15th century bell tower form a striking feature in the body of the church.
The font is probably as old as the church, and maybe even older. It's typical of the plain early stone fonts that are common in Hampshire village churches.
If we get all of us in there, we'll just collapse. Well, no, well.
The hamlet of Well is at the site of Gistard's Well of the Saxon Charter. This well is at the track junction of the Harroway and the Morthway. Isn'hurst.
Distinctive bright green.
Thank you. We saw you, David. We got seen that.
I'll start that again. So to Isonhurst on the Blackthorn Way, which is where you're standing. Isonhurst was the low wooded ridge where iron was smelted, probably is the name, the translation of Isonhurst. And there are a few other alternatives, one delightful one. Ison was an old name for kingfisher, and it might have been the low wooded ridge by the place of kingfishers, which would refer actually to the farm below the ridge, which is still called Isnage Farm, which is a remnant of the old Saxon name of this place. That's why you couldn't find it on the maps. So at this point, the highest point for some distance on the Harroway was a track junction, an ancient wood, a place which the Saxons actually started their perambulation of Crondall. So it had significance of some sort. And it has this view, Hawkstone Common. Hawkstone Common. I mean, there is something about that hill. And it's this point that you get this particular view of it from. It was more wooded than even in recent times. And I'm afraid the farmer absolutely butchered the whole landscape around here about 20 years ago. So although the hilltops themselves were always visible, but they were much more wooded on the lower slopes until around 1970. We'll go and have a look at that, and then we'll be very disciplined and go back to the minibus.
Right.
Ancient woodland at Isonhurst.
Yes, you know, yes.
Talking about
My camera won't do justice. No. I'm not even going to try.
I'm getting the sun actually.
Don't these normally grow on sort of downland?
Not this type.
No?
This is a woodland orchid.
Yeah.
But a lot of orchids are on downland. When we get back to the bust, I'll read you all the country names, or some of them. There's almost... I haven't looked up the reference, but it might be interesting sometime.
Did you get that?
No, it won't come out well.
No, you're sorry, you gentlemen.
Horsedown Common.
There's nothing up there as far as oiling the ground.
We should keep your head there because you won't bring the sun out of the cameras. You can just move over that way.
Yeah, there's
Lovely.
monuments up there.
No, it's triangulation.
Sheep House Copse, a walk along the ancient Sibbs Way and through the copse. The way formed the boundary of Crondall 1,000 years ago. The path may have been in use long before. There are 2 barrows within the wood, and the copse has 130 species of wild flowers, including 30 trees and shrubs, characteristics of woodlands, and over 60 others on grassy rides.